several steps, but it's actually a pretty seamless transition. It just takes a minute to hop into the right place.
Okay.
Yay. All right. Wonderful. All right. Well, good morning again, everybody. We are in day 3 of this amazing summit. I hope that everybody has had the opportunity to take the advantage of seeing some of these amazing speakers. We're just going to continue with that amazing streak this morning. We have Meredith with us today, and she's going to be talking about creating rules for your family that serve your family. That may be a little unconventional, maybe be a little bit different outside the box. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say, Meredith, because I think a lot of people, moms especially, we tend to think that rules are the best way to go, and society kind of tells us one thing to do, and that's what we've done for so long. So I'm super excited to hear your perspective and how you do that with your family. As always, if there's comments or questions, just put them in the Facebook chat, and then I will relay those to Meredith at the end. All right, Meredith, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. And hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm so excited to be here with you today talking on this topic. First of all, I'll tell you a little bit about who I am. My name is Meredith Keith-Chirch, and my pronouns are she, her. I live in Tucson, Arizona in the United States with my husband and our 15-year-old. I'm also the mom of 2 adult stepkids, and besides being lots of other things like we are. So there's, I love to dance and sing. So I'm actually a performing artist and engaged in some theater and concerts from time to time. Can be elusive when we're moms. And so among these things, I also own Decolonizing Your Health, which is a coaching center where I serve as a lifestyle optimization coach. And I really focus on the areas of health and wellness to create women, often moms, create lives I like to say that we never need a vacation from. So today we're going to focus on a few things that I've learned, both through my personal experience as well as with supporting clients over the years. So I know that as a stay-at-home mom, you're not sitting around with a ton of time on your hands. So I'm going to jump right in and get started with our topic. And we will have questions, time for questions and answers at the end if folks have those. So today we're going to talk about creating your own, perhaps unconventional life and house rules to really benefit your and your family's overall health. I'm going to talk about 3 ways that society may have given us messages that we're not enough as stay-at-home moms, as well as 3 ways to start reframing those thoughts into an outlook that will really help you start making decisions about what you want and what your family is going to work best with in terms of your life rules. And just make sure they're lining up with your values and the values that you want to pass on to your kids. And to start you off on the road, once we talk about those ways to reframe, I'm actually going to give some ideas in 7 specific areas that you can take a look at to decide what works for you. And if you're currently making choices in those areas that work, or if there are some that are maybe not completely lined up with what you want to be doing. So first of all, I want to start talking about how, due to some of the messages that we're getting in society, many of us have ended up feeling alone in our parenting journey. Even if we have friends and relatives, etc., when we're a stay-at-home mom, we might be the only adult. And a lot of times I find that it can feel we're just not doing enough. We have so many things going on, yet at the end of the day, oh, we meant to do this, and there was this we didn't get to. And so I find that it's really important for us to know how we got to where we are at this point, if we're feeling that, and know where our starting point was to get us to move out of it and really towards our joy. So the first way that we get some messages from society is from this concept of productivity, right? So when I talk with folks about decolonizing our health, this really came from colonization. And colonization has taught us that our worth is tied to our productivity, which in modern society has a specific definition, tends to come along with having a job that's working for someone else, perhaps a specific wage, salary. Maybe we're expected to go somewhere else, or in this day and age, sometimes we work from home, but it's all coming down to producing something tangible that somebody else can count and see and then know your worth. But that's really just colonization at work through capitalism. So if you're a stay-at-home mom, you may not have these things to show someone because our work is very different, right? The second message that we sometimes get is that we need to fall in line with expectations of what a woman or identifying person, what a mother is expected to do in this day and age. And colonization has really pulled us away from a lot of ancient wisdom and traditional practices during times which mothers were respected to know things, just know things because they were revered in that role, right? They're leaders, really, the queens. And in some cultures, this still remains. However, in many, we're not respected in that same way. So an example of a traditional practice that was just in existence was having support all around us as mothers. People were eager to support us because what we were doing was very important and is still very important. So while now we may have one or at the most two adults supporting kids, in the past we would have a huge community. And I know this is something that some of the other speakers have talked about in terms of, growing up and having grown up and then raising kids in a group, not just relying on one or two people. So that value and importance on parenting and raising kids was really respected. And now it's not always talked about, the value and the importance of what caregivers do. We sort of just expect people to magically be raised, to become healthy adults. We're not really talking about how that magic's happening or who's responsible for that. And it turns out that it's often expected that the women, especially moms, are going to do that magic, right? So then the third area of messaging that we've gotten is that we're not the experts. There are others in power who have all the knowledge. There's a right and wrong way to parent, and we just need to learn it. We don't just innately know it. Someone else is the expert. And I think that it can be super helpful to turn to folks that have expertise. And I think there's a difference between getting support, knowledge, and resources from those people and completely giving over our power because we're doubting that we still have that innate knowledge. There's no one right way to do things, right? And so while it's great to get guidance, we're still the experts and we don't need to hand over our power. So in looking at those messages that we've been given to sort of end up where we are today, I just want to reframe them before moving on to some concrete specific ways this could apply to us. So in terms of the first reframe, working for someone else or to make things that are tangible does not equal worth as a person. And it serves folks who are giving us those messages because they want to further their own goals, perhaps make money and maybe not always in ways that help others. However, being productive isn't this end goal that ever works towards our health or our family's health, right? So everything we're doing in life is work, technically, right? Each thing that we're doing to support our family, to support our kids, that's all work. It's extremely productive. So redefining this for ourselves, I think, can really help loosen some of those pressures, some of the anxieties that we might have, and just lets us model how being human takes many different forms. We're modeling that for our kids. We're modeling it for other moms that might be feeling pressure. And we don't have to take direction from others to feel like we're doing something important. In this way, our hope is maybe that our kids would feel empowered to chart their own course when they grow and follow their individual paths, rather than feeling like they've got to do this one thing in order to be productive in society. And wouldn't it be a great feeling if our kids never had to get the impression that what they were putting into the world wasn't enough? Like if they just grew up and knew that their path is their work. The second reframe I want to talk about is related to that concept of sort of giving up the ancient and original wisdom that we've had in of newer technologies or ideas. It's time to really just find our way back to that. We don't need to be pulled away. And it doesn't mean that there aren't great ideas when it comes to newer things and technologies. And just listening to our inner knowing and the leader that we do still really have within is going to help us suss out which of those work for us, which of ours don't. In that line of thinking, going back to that finding community, help us, and knowing that that's a natural way to parent. It's not admitting defeat. The goal not being independent, which is our message we get from this, right? Well, we need help. We can do it ourselves. The thing is, we weren't meant to do it ourselves, and that's not really how we're wired. We can ask for help. We can get help, and that's actually going back to the way we've always known, that supportive way. So it doesn't have to be as hard as people often make it out to be. You don't have to do it alone. And then that third reframe that I want to talk about is that, giving our power to other folks. And the direction that I like to take things in is just always knowing from the start that we are always the expert on our own lives, period. It doesn't mean we're not going to make mistakes or make choices that we think, oh, I'm going to do that differently next time. But when we embrace the wisdom that we already have, rather than sort of grabbing onto these ideas and sticking with them, even if they don't feel good to us once we've tried them, we're able to make our own life and family rules. And we can feel free to break the ones that aren't helping us and that might actually be hurting us in the long run. So you may be thinking, okay, I understand where we got to where we are, how we got to where we are now, and how we can turn those ideas around. How do I actually apply this, Meredith? How do I use these new reframed ideas and put them into practice? So that is what I'm going to talk about now. And I'll give you examples of what sometimes people have in mind when we think about rules, whether they be for our life or our family, particularly when we're dealing with kiddos. So some conventional ideas, for example, are that, food needs to be super structured, and how we feed families, who's responsible for feeding our families, getting food on the table, times of day, do we need to have a schedule, certain numbers of meals per day? These are some we're told, oh, we need these in place. Sleeping on schedules, all of our kids have to go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time, and that sort of thing. The pressure that we sometimes get to own different toys, games, and gear for our kids, versus what we really need or want in our families. Similarly, on the topic of sort of more is better type of thing, activities. What type of activities could we be introducing to our families? What do we really need to do? Again, what are those messages that say, we need to sign up for as many things as possible. We need lots of structured adult-led activities for our kids is more actually better. The concept of where our kids spend their time once they get older. So I know some of us, I've heard already some of the speakers talk about having opted out of the school system. That is an option, just knowing that that is a choice. And if your kids are in school, knowing that you often have choices in schools. So there are options there too. And some schools really focus on that industrial mindset, right? And preparing folks to go into that. So learning and kind of churning out products, instilling that sense of competition from a really young age, rather than that collaboration and cooperation. So those are some choices that we have as well. Giving our kids chores, versus the idea of allowing them to be an important part of our household. And how is it that we can work together, rather than sort of separate? And the other thing I would say is we often have rules that we're told about really getting our kids to just obey us and do what we say. And sometimes that can come into conflict with valuing the relationship that we have with our kids, and how we're really feeling about who's in charge and who makes the decisions. Is it a collaboration? Is it a one person making all of the decisions, that kind of thing? So a lot of times we get messages from other family members about these rules and what we're doing in our homes. Sometimes these family members who have all the best intentions have a mindset that's very conventional, perhaps more in line with the colonization mindset of some of these ideas about what we should be as moms and partners and where we should be spending our time, particularly how we should be putting everyone else first and not taking care of ourselves. I know personally, I've received these messages. In fact, when I first got married to my husband before I'd even become a mom, I remember talking to my own mother about some of my interests. And as I mentioned, I'm a performing artist and I had some opportunities to do theater. And right away, she just explicitly told me, this wasn't even just, like sort of a hidden message, that my role was to be at home with my husband, focusing on being a wife, getting the house all into shape, and I shouldn't be getting distracted with these outside extra ideas or interests. And so, I don't know if you've had that opportunity to have that experience of people sort of telling you what you need to be doing based on their ideas of roles. So here's the thing about all of these rules. The long and short of it is people are going to criticize our parents' choices no matter what we do. So not make the choices that make ourselves and our families happy and healthy. Now, some people would say, oh, well, this is kind of negative. You can't win. The way I have turned that around is just to say, you know what? If I'm so focused on pleasing other people, everyone else except our families, then we end up pleasing no one, least of all our families. So if I realize that I can actually do whatever works for us and it's going to have the same effect because people are going to be on, both sides or either sides, that frees me up a little because there really isn't pleasing anyone, right? So let's please our family. And just an example of this is with food, right? When you decide what works for your family at this moment in time, there are always going to be people say, oh, you're going to give your kid that, like, oh, I didn't realize you fed it, that kind of thing, versus, oh, I can't give them this because perhaps they have a sensitivity or an allergy. What do you mean you don't let them have that? Oh, there's no harm in that, right? So there's both sides to that. The same is true of technology. Like, oh, you give your kids screen times versus, oh, how come your kids don't have phones? So I invite you to allow yourself to actually be freed up by the idea that there are always going to be people on either side of whatever your choices are that may or may not support you. And so let's just focus on what works for us. Most of the time, I find that people who have a hard time with what we're doing are actually insecure with the choices that they're making or that they've made in the past. And once I realized that, I felt so much better because it wasn't really me they were criticizing. It was themselves in this way that they really were sort of outwardly processing that. So hopefully that offers you a little bit of help in that it's not about you, it's about them if they're having some issues. And maybe you're providing some thought opportunities for what they're doing. And while they may be saying that, they may go back and think, oh, am I making the choices that are right for me? Because I thought everybody had to do this thing. But this person over here is doing something different. So maybe I could do something different. So it actually can be very inspirational for folks. So I want to offer these 7 areas of focus that I promised. So these are just some ways that you can take what I'm talking about and really apply them to what works for you right now. First of all, the idea of the chores, which I mentioned. So a lot of families find that while we're told that chore charts are good and specific jobs can be good, that can work for some kids and some families. A lot of times, though, it ends up having the kids feel like they can't do extra things. Maybe there's something they want to do around the house, but that's someone else's job, right? So if this is true for your family, find out what the kids enjoy doing, the things that they like to do that you'd rather not do, and let that be a little bit more free and easy. So what I find sometimes is that I've fallen into this trap. I have clients who've done it as well. We just want to do this thing. Let's say we want to make dinner, or we want to sweep the floor, or we want to vacuum the couch because we'll do it better. We'll do it faster. We'll do it right. And if you're like me and working on perfectionism, it's sometimes hard to let that go, especially to a young or small being who is maybe not going to do it the way we would do it. What I find is if we can let go of that and let them help, that's the point. Because the great thing is that when they feel like they're a part of the family and they're contributing, they're going to do things on their own. It's not going to constantly be the struggle of, will you please do this and please help me? They want to be a part of the household. Everyone wants to be a part of this group, and they don't necessarily want to be told what to do and controlled about it, but they do want to help us. So allow them to do those things, perhaps that you might have to clean up afterwards. They spilled the flour because they're helping with the mixing bowl, or they dropped the tomato slices or whatever it was. Yep, that might, with you doing a little something to help, great about after they were allowed to do something that they hadn't been allowed to do before, someone else was doing because they were older. So take a look at where your rules around that could really benefit that overall feeling of community, rather than just, let's stick to this list. Times. So this is another big one that I hear about a lot and that I talk about with folks. So do we have them? Do we not have them? The answer is it depends. There are, again, no strict, need to do's here. It's going to depend on your schedules, the time of year. So for example, with schedules, do you have activities in the morning? Do you have things in the evening? Does someone get up for work really early? All of these kinds of things. The time of year fluctuates because of the sun, right? So humans were designed to take our cues from sunrise and sunset. Now, of course, we have artificial lighting now, and that kind of changes things. However, our bodies don't always know that. So sometimes at different times of year, we're going to be later sleepers, earlier sleepers, and we can roll with that. And it also depends on our natural tendencies and our kids' natural tendencies. And, that's going to change over time, grow, or if they're going different, births, teething, all these kinds of things. So giving ourselves permission to make new rules, bend the rules, and really shift things to make them more supportive of our health. Sleep is a huge factor in all of our health, ours as adults and our kids, right? So finding the rhythm that works for everyone, rather than trying to cram us all into the same type of thing, goes a long way towards giving everybody the energy, particularly moms, that we need to get through those days, right? It also teaches our kids about themselves, and it sets them up for good health long term, because they can always turn back to good sleep habits when they realize, I'm an early person. I know this because I've always been an early person. I wake up early, but I like to go to bed. Or I'm a later person. I trend to that. When our kids get older, even if they lose their way, they'll remember what it felt like to have sleep completely dialed in and geared towards their particular body and schedule. So an example of this is I had a client who had an early bird teen. So, there's the stereotype that all kids late and that kind of thing. Well, not necessarily. This person was just wired differently. And so, there was no need to sort of assume that that kid was going to need to stay up late and then sleep late. It was like, okay, just, what? They're just embracing it. And they just embrace the fact that, okay, we can schedule things differently, because this is how they're wired, right? So if you have a late kid, it's not always a bad idea to let them settle in, because we can't really make anyone go to sleep, right? Which we all know that. We've tried, I'm guessing. We all have it, but many of us have. And there's the option of just getting quiet, dark, low-key activities set up for them, so that your early folks or your people who have to wake up early for schoolwork, et cetera, can still do what they need to do. But then we're not trying to force someone out of their natural schedule. So puzzles, audiobooks, reading, all those kinds of things, drawing, writing are good ideas. So those are some ideas for sleep and rules around that. Schools. So I mentioned this, and there's always the option to opt out of school, which is like a whole other topic and talk. Just knowing that it's absolute that your family has to be in the school system. If you are in the school system, look at your different options and which schools that are available to you are putting in measures that really care about your kids' health and will, I would say, support your family values when your kids are outside of the home. So, one thing that people think they have to do is just send kids to the school that they went to, that is nearest to them, or that everyone in the neighborhood said is the best. Again, side of this, particularly, what are your options? And if you have multiple options, you get to choose. You can ask questions. You can go visit, find out thing like do they allow bathroom breaks at different times, or is that super structured? Are they allowing their kids to listen to their bodies? When they're hungry, are they allowed to eat, have snacks, drink water, that sort of thing? Are there measures in place for them to take a break or feel like they're in a safe place if there's an uncomfortable situation going on, so that they can support regulating themselves? So I think a lot of times we just don't realize that we have choices. Oh, nope, we go to this school and that's just how it works, right? But this is a great situation and an opportunity for you to question that and just look at your options and go with what feels good for you and your family. The area I want to talk about is the concept of equality. This is a pretty controversial one. Now, I myself am an only child. However, I am married to someone who has siblings. I have very close friends who have siblings. So, I have seen this in practice. A lot of times we think we've got multiple kids, we have to treat everybody the same because otherwise it won't be fair. Not treating them the same doesn't mean that all your kids aren't loved and respected. However, everybody's different. So while we want to make our kids have access to the same things, it doesn't mean that their lives should all be the same day in and day out. So some examples of why we would want to make things different. The most obvious one sometimes is age, right? Because there are things that some of our kids will be ready for and others aren't at the exact same time. So we may need to differentiate. Abilities. Every kiddo has different levels of abilities. Let's just say they're the same age. They're still not going to be able to handle different levels of responsibility or different stressors in the same way. There are other factors at play also. For example, neurodivergence. And if we have kiddos whose brains are wired differently, which is really all that means, then we need to take those into consideration as well. So I encourage you to take a look at this if you have kiddos, to see where are there ways that maybe you break that rule of everyone does the same thing in the same way. Again, you're giving your kids respect and love at the same level, right? But we're also meeting them where they are, and that may mean treating them differently. Some examples of this in different areas are food. Not all of our kids maybe react the same way to different ingredients. Some of our kids may have sensitivities, and we may need to treat kids differently. It doesn't mean that we need to make 16 different meals. However, we can have, a number of choices within the same meal so that people's needs can be met. Sleep, I've already mentioned. This is where this comes in, particularly when some kids' brains are moving really fast. Some of them have a harder time winding down. So if we have people doing quiet time or wind down time at the same time, that can be better than saying everybody's going to sleep and lights out and that kind of thing at the same time. Movement needs is another thing, right? So all types of bodies like all types of different movements. And so maybe you have some kids who love swimming. Maybe some of your kids don't like the water. Maybe you're a family who hikes, but you've got one or two kids who that is just not their thing. So changing up family activities can be one way to ensure that everybody's getting what they need at some point in time. We can trade off. Maybe not everybody wants to do Twister, this kind of thing, rather than sort of trying to force everyone into the same activity at the exact same time. This is another example, just like the sleep, where it really teaches our kids to be self-aware, because then they get to know what feels good to them, what works for them. Oh, you know what? I'm not a swimmer, but boy, I can jump rope, and maybe nobody else can, but I can, jump circles there. So just taking a look at those things and being okay with that. Do have a relative treated both of their kids, tried to treat the exact same way really actually bred resentment because their daughter just wanted to be supported with some of the challenges that she was having. And because the parents were treating them the same, she sort of felt like her brother, they were all getting the same thing, but her brother was benefiting. She was not. They needed different levels of treatment and support in that way. So just take a look at this and see if there's something that works for you. Activities is the fifth area that I wanted to cover. And I mentioned this, but the long and short of it is it's definitely not necessary to stuff everybody's schedules. Now, I have definitely seen some activities that just sounded so great to me, and my kiddo was maybe super interested in doing it. We signed up, and then it turns out to be overwhelming. There are things that, we all think are a great idea at the beginning, and then we need to change course. There are also times where we're sort of forcing it, right? A lot of times society tells us, oh, our kids need to have lots of activities. They need to learn how to be around other people. They're going to learn how to be around other people as long as you let them leave the house, just so you know. They're going to need to learn these skills and that. Most of the skills that they need to, well, we could question that. It depends on what they're going to be doing in life. And also, they're going to learn it naturally. So if a kiddo is interested in something, great. However, do not feel the need to sign them up for a bunch of stuff for socialization reasons, or as they get older because it looks good on their resume. That's a big one. Their activities and their needs, that kind of thing, are going to come about naturally. And it's really healthy for the family to not trying to be overwhelming themselves, getting people here, getting people there, and just focusing on what feels good to you all. Family time, for example, is okay to hold on to. I hear this from folks. Well, we used to have Friday night dinners, but then we thought they should do soccer, so we signed up for soccer games or soccer practices. Thing, right? You can certain times off limit to protect that family time and to protect downtime for everyone, which is another huge health supporting measure. So let's say you do Sunday morning hikes. Don't sign up for something that practices on Sunday mornings. It's okay to not do that. You can often find another option, first of all, if it's something you really want to do. There are weekday afternoons or that sort of thing. But you have that freedom to do that. And and say, you know what, this is really important to us, family, and we're going to keep this. We're not going to run with the crowd. We're going to find another activity, or we're going to sign up for a different day, and we will make new friends and who are doing that. So again, this is just so helpful also for really showing your kids how to manage their own time at some point, because once they learn that they have the power to say, you know what, on my own schedule, nobody else does, they will become accustomed to setting good boundaries on their own calendars and their own daytime spending, So it's another opportunity for us to say, what if our kids could experience way less burnout than we as adults have? Because they knew when and how to say no in a kind way to other people who are asking for their time. So not only does lightening your family's schedule really improve everybody's wellness and frame of mind and ability to get together without arguing and all of that, but it's also modeling a great tool. Number 6 on these strategies is to put the relationship first when it comes to figuring out your rules. So I learned from Rebecca Head of the Consciously Parenting Project that it's all about the relationship. So when we're thinking about schedules and feeding and rules and all of that, sometimes we forget this idea. So, and then also when we get a message from folks that the goal is to have our kids be obedient and that's it. At the end of the day, what do we want? What are we looking for out of our families? Do we want everybody else to like us and to think we're doing a good job with parenting? Or do we want to have relationships with our family members? And I mean the people we live with, right? So our partners, if we have them, our kids, is it more important for us to get our way? Or is it more important for us to have kids that want to have relationships with us when they grow, when they're no longer in our home, and when they have lives of their own? So when we talk about healthy families, sometimes we're thinking of, well, as long as we're all free from cold, flus, that sort of thing. And that's absolutely true. We definitely want to be free from major health issues. At the end of the day, our relationships are also a big part of this that we sometimes think about. We want to feel good and have energy and be positive and really be following our joy together. And that's what a healthy relationship really is about. So putting the relationship first when we're considering all of these rules. And in addition to the relationship, the last area that I want to touch on is putting ourselves first. So this is the last area, interestingly enough, on purpose, because I find that sometimes when we are listening to something and taking in information, sometimes the first and the last thing we hear is what really stick with us. So if nothing else sticks from today, I really want this to get to. It's possible. Tells us that women are often here to serve others. And it tells us that in that idea, we don't come first, we come last. And so many of us believe this and we're acting as such. And I've been here, a number of my clients have been there. And I just want to say that it's just not true. We can serve others and cannot do anything for other people place of complete overwhelm, burnout that often results from our taking care of everyone else first. So when we get up in the morning, giving ourselves those first few minutes, if we're able to, even if it's just a few seconds in the bathroom, right? Because a lot of times we're not the first ones awake in our household, or at the end of the day, whatever it is, having those moments to really hear our own voice in the midst of all the others really will help us. It's going to give us more energy, first of all. We cannot be supporting our kids if we've got that burned out feeling and we're flagging in energy. We're, our memories are fuzzy, right? Hear about mom brain. Those are things that are going to challenge us to help others. And the other reason we want to be making sure we're taking care of ourselves first is that, like all the other things I've mentioned, we're teaching our kids to do that themselves later, right? So they're going to treat themselves from what they've learned from seeing things, not necessarily from what we suggest to them. So making sure they're giving to others out of a state of health and wellness is to them as well. So I've gone over several different areas here. To wrap up, what I want to say is remember that your kids change over time, and so will your rules for your house, for your life, for their lives. Sometimes we say, right, that when our kids go through different phases, oh, just when I had it figured out, something changed. Yes, this is true. The beauty of that, however, is that we can mold and adjust. We don't have to stick with things. Sometimes we get used to something and things are changing, but we're trying to hold on to this rule that we had, and it's just not helping us anymore. So we are allowed to let that go. That's also in the converse, right? When something feels like, oh, I don't love this, it's okay because it's going to change. So you'll be able to come out of that. And the other thing I would suggest as a reminder is gear things towards the folks who are living in your home, your extended family or folks, friends, neighbors, etc., who are not living in your home, while well-meaning, are not making the rules for your house. And they're welcome to use what they're learning for their own relationships and their own homes. And it's okay to lovingly decline to use that information and advice. So I gave you the 3 ways that society may have given you the message that you're not enough as a stay-at-home mom, as well as 3 ways to reframe those thoughts into an outlook that will help you start making decisions now about your own life and family rules to make sure they're lining up with your values. And hopefully these 7 specific areas I mentioned allow you to just start with something to take a look at and decide if you're making choices that feel right for you, and aren't just the ones that you feel like other people have told you to make. So if there are any questions, I would love to hear them. I also just want to mention that if you want to dive more into this area and just look at how to align your life with really what truly works for you and your family, you're welcome to check out my free guide that I have to decolonizing your health. And I think we'll put that link in the chat. It's just decolonizingyourhealth.com/motherhood. And again, we'll put that in the chat. So any questions?
Yes. I am like I've had so much fun this week, like learning from everybody, but every time I finish, I'm like, oh my gosh, like something just blew my mind. It's so great. First, I feel like I'm already doing this and didn't realize what I was doing, which is kind of a cool thing.
Yes.
I mean, I am a single mom to a 3-year-old, and he, like, when, like, talking about bedtimes, like he goes to bed when he's tired and he wakes up when he's not tired anymore. And I've never really stuck to like a schedule because we just didn't need to.
Yes.
But also, like, he just kind of does his own thing. And I never really thought of it as, a bedtime being like a rule that society tends to put on us, right?
Mhm.
To do right or wrong. So that was really kind of cool. And I also appreciated, you said this earlier about, people are going to criticize you, whatever you do or don't do. And becoming a mom, I definitely have found that to be true.
Yes.
So, it makes sense for us to just do what's best for the people that are closest to us and don't worry what other people have to say.
Yes. Yes. That's
So,
great. That's really cool to know that, hey, you're already sort of like in this framework early
yeah,
on.
yeah,
That's
it's really
amazing.
cool. So there aren't any questions, but there are a lot of comments. There's like, yay, break the rules. Um, getting wrapped up in, quieting down my parenting style around certain people, which is interesting too, because,
Mhm.
when you take your kids to the park and you let your kid run up the slide, you always have those moms that are like, are you gonna stop them? you know
Yeah.
so I thought that was interesting as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm so excited that um you were able to join us for this summit. I think this is perfect place for you to be. We have lots of moms in here that need to hear that it's okay to not follow everything that people are telling you to do. So I definitely think we're in the right spot.
Yes.
um and I will definitely put that link in the comments for you, as well as once the recording is put into the all access pass, we will add that in there as well. So Meredith, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of your amazing knowledge with us about, thinking more about the importance of our family relationships and not so much about society norms. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes.